The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with hushed conversations as diplomats and military leaders reviewed the latest report. A vast, unidentified fleet had entered the outer sectors of the Empire's domain, moving with purpose. The surveillance systems had traced its origin to an unremarkable planet on the galactic fringe, Earth, a species barely acknowledged in the grand scheme of the cosmos. The officials scoffed at the notion that humans could pose a real threat. They were primitive, newly introduced to spacefaring technology, and lacking in numbers. The Supreme Chancellor waved a dismissive hand. A minor nuisance, a species still learning to crawl. Let the fleet commanders handle them. Yet, not everyone in the room shared this arrogance. Admiral Kestel, a grizzled veteran of countless campaigns, studied the data with a growing sense of unease. His species, the Xelvar, had encountered humans before, though those records were buried deep within classified archives. He had seen the reports, the unusual tactics, the adaptability, the sheer stubbornness of the human forces. They were unpredictable, refusing to adhere to traditional patterns of engagement. He cleared his throat, standing tall before the assembled leaders. Underestimation is a mistake. This fleet is not moving blindly. They are advancing with purpose, and if they come in force, it means they are prepared. A ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. The Chancellor smirked. "And what would you have us do, Admiral? Bow before these mammals? Send envoys to beg for mercy?" Kestel clenched his jaw. "I would advise caution. Study them first. Test their intentions before making rash decisions." The laughter continued. The Council had faced countless species over millennia, civilizations that rose and fell under the might of the Empire. Humanity was no different, they believed. A young species with dreams of grandeur, nothing more. A decision was made without hesitation: dispatch a fleet to intercept the intruders and bring their leaders to heel. Meanwhile, in the vastness of space, the human battle fleet continued its advance. Ships moved in tight formations, maintaining perfect discipline. At the heart of the fleet, Admiral Ethan Cross stood on the command deck of the UNS Dauntless, eyes locked onto the holographic map displaying their position. He knew they were being watched. His officers waited for his orders, the tension thick in the air. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Send the message again." Across the void, a single transmission echoed into the abyss. It carried no threats, no declarations of war, just a simple warning. "Humanity does not seek war, but we will not be stopped." The message reached the Galactic Council's defense outposts, where analysts reviewed it with confusion. The words were direct, neither hostile nor submissive. Some hesitated, questioning if war was inevitable. Others saw it as arrogance, a challenge from a species too naive to understand its place. The Empire's response was swift. A fleet of 50 warships, commanded by Grand Admiral Xelvar, moved to intercept. The battle-hardened general saw no reason to negotiate. Humanity would be humbled before the might of the Empire, crushed before it became a true threat. As the two fleets neared each other, tension crackled in the silence of space. The human ships did not alter course. No panic, no hesitation. The alien officers watching from their warships found this unsettling. Normally, when faced with superior forces, smaller fleets either retreated or tried to negotiate. These humans did neither. On the Dauntless, Admiral Cross observed the enemy fleet on the main display. The alien ships were larger, heavily armored, and outnumbered his forces significantly. A conventional battle would be suicide. But humanity had never won wars through brute force alone. His lips curled into a small smile. Let them make the first move. The alien commanders, eager to display their dominance, opened fire. Blazing energy beams streaked across the void, targeting what they believed were key positions. Explosions erupted, but something was wrong. The human fleet moved in unpredictable patterns, dodging with unnatural precision. Then, the counterattack came. The first alien warship exploded in a fiery blaze. Then another. The battlefield turned into chaos as human ships weaved through enemy formations, their weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy. It was not just raw firepower, it was strategy, tactics unlike anything the aliens had seen before. They expected brute force but found something far more terrifying. Admiral Kestel, watching from the distant command center, felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had warned them. He had told them not to underestimate these humans, but they had refused to listen. Now, as the first wave of the Empire's fleet was annihilated with surgical precision, he knew the truth. Humanity was not a species to be ignored, and they had only just begun. The Galactic Council reeled from the shocking reports. The intercept fleet had been utterly annihilated. 50 warships, some of the most advanced in the Empire, reduced to debris in the cold vacuum of space. Survivors, few as they were, spoke in hushed, shaken voices of the battle. They described a force unlike any other, ships that moved with impossible precision, tactics that defied logic, and weapons that struck like lightning. In the council chambers, the Supreme Chancellor's face was dark with disbelief. "How is this possible?" he demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "They are human, a species that only recently left their homeworld." No one had an answer. Admiral Kestel, standing on the sidelines, watched in grim silence. He had warned them. He had told them not to underestimate this enemy. Now the price had been paid in blood. A new strategy was proposed: send diplomatic envoys, attempt to stall for time. Yet, another faction within the council resisted. Some still clung to their arrogance, believing the loss was due to an incompetent commander, a stroke of luck on the humans' part. The council fractured, torn between those who wished to negotiate and those who wanted vengeance. But humanity did not wait. The battle fleet continued its advance, moving deeper into Imperial space, ignoring all attempts at communication. Messages were sent, pleading for talks, but no response came. The only signal that continued to broadcast was the same as before: "Humanity does not seek war, but we will not be stopped." Panic began to spread. Citizens across the Empire, once assured of their military's superiority, now questioned their safety. The human fleet was coming, and no one could say what would happen next. Grand Admiral Xelfar, humiliated by the loss of his fleet, demanded another chance. He called upon the Empire's most powerful warships, the Dreadnought Legions, massive ships capable of wiping out entire planets. This time, he would lead the battle himself. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Ethan Cross studied the data on his display. The enemy was preparing for a second engagement, this time with even more firepower. It was expected. Humans knew how empires operated. They would never accept defeat without a demonstration of overwhelming strength. His officers waited for orders. Some were anxious, others confident. Cross knew that what they were about to do next would decide the fate of this war before it even truly began. He turned to his second-in-command. "Activate Phase 2. Begin the next maneuver." As the Dreadnought Legions moved to intercept, they failed to notice what lay beyond their immediate scanners. Hidden among the vast reaches of space, unseen to any Imperial technology, was another fleet, a second human armada, waiting in the shadows. And when the battle began, it was humanity that held the real surprise. "You said." Grand Admiral Xelfar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperious Wrath, watching the enemy fleet on the main display. The massive human warships were holding position, their weapons silent. It was almost insulting. Did they think they could intimidate the might of the Empire? He sneered. "They dared to challenge us with such pathetic numbers. This ends today." Around him, officers stood ready, their confidence restored by the sheer power of the Dreadnought Legions. These were not ordinary warships. They were planetary siege engines, each capable of wiping out entire fleets on its own. Their armor was impenetrable, their weapons capable of burning moons to dust. The humans would be crushed. With a single gesture, he gave the command: "All ships, fire at will." The void of space lit up with devastation. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic rail slugs rained down upon the human fleet. The stars themselves seemed to tremble under the assault. Yet, something was wrong. The human ships were moving in patterns unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. Instead of engaging directly, they danced between the attacks with unnatural precision. Even when hit, their hulls resisted destruction, shields flickering but never collapsing. Then, the counterattack came. From the darkness beyond the battle, an unseen force emerged, another human fleet, hidden from scanners, using stealth technology beyond anything the Empire believed possible. They struck from multiple directions at once, targeting critical weak points on the massive dreadnoughts. The Imperious Wrath shook violently as explosions rippled across its hull. Zelpher grabbed onto the command console, his eyes wide in disbelief. Where did those ships come from? His officers scrambled for answers, but there were none. The Empire had never fought an enemy like this. Humanity was not just using superior tactics, they were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. Across the battlefield, dreadnoughts exploded one by one, their reinforced armor useless against precision strikes that bypassed traditional defenses. Panic spread among the Imperial forces. The fleet that was meant to crush humanity was itself being torn apart. On the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Cross watched the chaos unfold with a steady gaze. "They're breaking," his second-in-command reported. Cross nodded. "Signal all ships. Push forward. Finish this." The final moments of the battle were a slaughter. The once mighty dreadnought legions crumbled, their hulking remains drifting in the abyss. The surviving Imperial ships turned and fled, abandoning their leader. Zelphar's hands trembled as he realized the truth. The Empire had lost. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous. And they were coming. The news of the catastrophic defeat spread across the Empire like wildfire. Entire sectors fell into silence, fear gripping the hearts of even the most powerful rulers. The Galactic Council convened an emergency meeting, their once proud arrogance replaced with uncertainty. For the first time in history, the Empire faced an enemy that could not only stand against them, but utterly crush their most powerful fleets. The loss of the dreadnought legions was a humiliation beyond measure. Grand Admiral Zelphar's fate remained unknown. His flagship had been the last to fall, and no distress signals had been received. Some whispered that the humans had taken him prisoner. Others feared something far worse. The question now was simple. What did humanity want? Across the Empire, countless emissaries were dispatched with offers of peace, trade, and even tribute. But humanity remained silent. Their fleet did not respond to hails. They did not slow their advance. They moved with eerie precision, bypassing outer colonies and heading straight for the Imperial core worlds. Panic took hold. On the capital planet of Velfar Prime, the streets were filled with protests and riots. Citizens demanded answers, but none were given. The once mighty Empire now trembled, powerless against an enemy they had never taken seriously. Deep within the Imperial War Command, Supreme Chancellor Vale watched the star maps with hollow eyes. The human fleet was unstoppable, their movements deliberate. Every system they passed was left untouched. No invasions, no planetary bombardments, nothing. It was as if they wanted to prove a point. In a desperate attempt to prevent the inevitable, the Council ordered the last of the Imperial Grand Fleets to assemble. Hundreds of ships, the strongest remaining forces of the Empire, were gathered in the Tarsus system, a final defensive line. But humanity had already anticipated this. On the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Ethan Cross studied the data in front of him. The enemy had gathered their forces, prepared for one last stand. His officers awaited his orders. Some were tense, others quietly confident. Cross exhaled, his voice calm as he gave the command. "Begin the final operation." At that moment, something unprecedented happened. A ripple in space, undetectable by Imperial sensors, signaled the arrival of an unseen force. Dozens, no, hundreds, of human warships emerged from deep space folds, surrounding the enemy fleet before they could even react. The last hope of the Empire had just become its final mistake. The Imperial Grand Fleet barely had time to react. One moment, they were preparing for battle, confident in their numbers. The next, the darkness of space was alive with hundreds of human warships emerging from the void. Panic rippled through the Imperial ranks. Their ships scrambled to reposition, but it was already too late. Humanity had surrounded them. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominion's Wrath, Admiral Syraxis gritted his teeth. How did they flank us? His officers had no answer. Human technology was far beyond anything they had imagined. Their stealth capabilities were something out of myth. A transmission came through. Unlike previous human broadcasts, this one was direct. The image of Admiral Ethan Cross appeared on the display, his expression unreadable. "You were given a warning," Cross said, his voice calm but firm. "You chose war. Now we end it." Syraxis clenched his fists. "We will not surrender." Cross sighed, as if he had expected this answer. "Then you will not leave this battlefield." The battle began. The human fleet moved with surgical precision, executing tactics the Empire had never encountered. They did not fight like conquerors. They fought like predators, efficient, relentless, and utterly unstoppable. Imperial warships exploded in rapid succession, their shields overwhelmed by pinpoint strikes. Massive battleships, once symbols of the Empire's might, were torn apart before they could even return fire. Syraxis barked orders, demanding counterattacks, flanking maneuvers, anything to turn the tide. But there was no tide to turn. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The Dominion's Wrath shook violently as multiple impacts rocked its hull. Fires erupted across the bridge. Officers screamed as systems failed one by one. Admiral Syraxis fell to his knees, his breath ragged. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The Empire had ruled the stars for millennia, crushing countless civilizations beneath its heel. And now, humanity had done the impossible. They had broken the unbreakable. Across the battlefield, Imperial ships began surrendering. Some self-destructed, refusing to be taken alive. Others fled, only to be hunted down moments later. The battle was over. The last remnants of the Imperial Grand Fleet had been erased from existence. On the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Cross watched in silence as the last enemy ship vanished from the battlefield. His officers cheered, but he remained still. This was not a victory to celebrate. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget. He turned to his second-in-command. "Send the final message to the Galactic Council." A single transmission was sent across all channels, a message that would shake the foundations of the Empire and beyond. "The war is over. Humanity does not conquer, but we do not forgive." The message spread like wildfire. Across the Empire, leaders, generals, and civilians alike listened in silence as humanity's final words echoed through their systems. "The war is over. Humanity does not conquer, but we do not forgive." It was not a declaration of victory. It was a warning. On the Imperial capital, Velfar Prime, Supreme Chancellor Vale sat motionless in his grand chamber. The once proud banners of the Empire hung limply in the silence. Around him, the High Council whispered in hushed voices, their fear palpable. What do they want?" one of the ministers finally asked. No one had an answer. Humanity had every opportunity to seize power, to demand tribute, to carve out its own empire, but they did none of that. Instead, they had destroyed the Empire's greatest fleets and then stopped. That was the most terrifying part. The unknown. Meanwhile, on the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Cross stood before a holographic display of the galaxy. His officers awaited his decision. The war was over, but the next steps were unclear. His second-in-command, Commander Rivera, broke the silence. "The Empire is collapsing. The outer colonies are in full revolt. Their military is shattered. What are our orders? Cross exhaled slowly. This was the moment history would remember. Hold position, he said finally. We don't need to do anything else. The Empire will destroy itself. And he was right. Without their fleets, without their iron grip over the galaxy, the Empire's rule crumbled overnight. Former vassal races, long oppressed, rose up in rebellion. Imperial governors abandoned their posts, their forces deserting in droves. The once mighty empire was now nothing more than a collection of warring factions, tearing each other apart in desperation. And humanity simply watched. They did not invade. They did not colonize. They did not demand power. They had proven their point. The galaxy had feared humanity as a primitive race, unworthy of respect. Now they would remember humanity as something far more terrifying. Not conquerors, not saviors, but the reckoning itself. In the aftermath of the Empire's collapse, the galaxy stood on the edge of an uncertain future. The once mighty rulers of 1,000 worlds were now reduced to feuding warlords, scrambling for whatever scraps of power remained. The Galactic Council, once the ultimate authority, was silent. Their chambers, once filled with voices of dominance, now echoed with fear. Humanity had done the impossible, not just by defeating the Empire, but by refusing to replace it. No invasions, no territorial claims, no demands for tribute, and yet their presence was felt everywhere. On Velthar Prime, what remained of the Imperial Senate convened in a desperate attempt to restore order. Supreme Chancellor Vale, his face lined with exhaustion, listened as advisors argued over their next course of action. We must reach out to them, one minister pleaded. Offer reparations. Plead for peace. Peace? Another scoffed. They aren't even attacking us anymore. They left, and yet we're still falling apart. That is their power. Silence filled the chamber. No one could deny it. Humanity had changed the rules of war. They had proven that they did not need to rule to control. And that terrified everyone. Across the stars, rumors spread like wildfire. Entire fleets had surrendered without a fight upon detecting human warships in their sectors. Planets once loyal to the Empire declared neutrality, fearing the mere idea of human retribution. Even criminal syndicates ceased operations where human presence was detected. After all, what was the point of profit when your enemy could end you before you even knew they were there? The fear of humanity was now stronger than any empire had ever been. And humanity knew it. On the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Cross observed the shifting power dynamics across the galactic map. Former Imperial factions, pirate lords, and independent worlds now moved carefully, aware that humanity's judgment could come at any moment. His officers awaited new orders, but Cross simply smiled. "We've done enough," he said. "Let them think. Let them wonder if we're watching." And so humanity withdrew, not in retreat, but in quiet observation. Their fleets vanished back into the void, leaving only whispers and nightmares behind. The galaxy had learned its lesson. For generations to come, the stars would remember the day the Empire fell. Not to a conquering force, not to an invading army, but to humanity's warning.